My name is Celestita Blanco, the Artsy sister, and today we're reading Saturnastra Loki. This is chapter 15, part 1. Good thinking. Now more to the point. Do you remember when I tried to help you? Asked Loki. Yes, I remember you botching such a simple request, said Karina, pouting her lips slightly. Do you remember seeing a water demon near me? Asked Loki. Not really. Look, do not worry about it. Such faint memories will become less common the more time passes, said Karina, scoffing. It doesn't seem right to forget, said Loki sadly. Right or wrong has nothing to do with remembering. Just learn from your past and then move on with your life, said Karina, pulling at Loki's cheek till he slapped her hand away. When Karina left, Loki was left alone with his strange water companion. Looking at her, he asked, Pray do tell me, what are you exactly? I do not know. I just know that I exist and nothing else, and I am known unto the magic users as an elemental. And I have lived among mankind for most of my life, and yet from time to time I am possessed by strange thoughts and memories that are not my own. And when I dug you up today, I was acting upon those memories, and I wanted to see if there was that little, what you call it, the thing that humans have on the roof of their houses, you know. They come in the shape of chickens and turn in the direction of the wind, explained the elemental. Much to my surprise, I found a fellow buried on the ground. Where did you get that medallion? Asked Loki. I stole it, said the elemental. You should be more careful lest you turn into a demon, said Loki, narrowing his eyes. That will never happen, said the elemental, laughing. I am glad to see you are in such high spirits, said Loki, grinning, and he added, and after giving it a very little thought, would you like to be the source of my magic? I am told that it's a service you elementals offer humans from time to time. The elemental looked at Loki from head to toe, and he was still covered in grime and dirt, and like a fleshly unearthed corpse, and she could discern the dingy made outfit and the armor hidden beneath. In the end, she said, What's in it for me? Well, if you make a contract with me, you can go wherever I go and see what I see, explained Loki. I do not need to bind to a fellow to see and go to places, said the elemental. But there are places that only I can go, and things that only I can see, and they cannot be revealed to just anyone. Be the source of my power, and only then will I give, insisted Loki. In the end, the elemental extended her hand, and Loki taken it, kissed it, and he felt his mouth burn all the way down his throat, and the symbol of the contract was marked in the back of his throat, and hers was painted in her palm. And she then said, My name is Anahil, and it will be a pleasure to accompany you in your travels. Loki, a pleasure as well, said Loki, bowing, and taking out his staff, he added, You may bind to this, if you find it fitting. It pleases me so, said Anahid, binding himself to the gimmick staff, which was renamed the Crozier of Anahid. Gripping the staff, Loki spoke the words of magic, and he traced a crescent moon in the sky before slamming the bottom tip of the staff twice on the floor. It then started raining. Since Anahid was still acclimating to the new staff, it was a bit of a localized rain, so localized that it was a slight drizzle falling only on Loki's head. Anahid then said, You certainly do know your business. It runs in the family, said Loki, smiling. Everything but the magic, so it seems, said Anahid coldly.
That is a weird reference.
You are no fun, said Loki, raising an eyebrow. So what will you do now with your newly acquired powers? Asked Anahid. I don't know, there really isn't a lot of time to do much, and I will return home in less than a week, explained Loki. Oh dear, is your home safe? Asked Anahid. Why is that your first thought is to use your powers to harm others? Asked Loki. You would not have me waste away by watering plants, would you? Inquired Anahid. And here I was hoping for a bit of fun. If you're itching for a battle, I will happily to oblige. There is not a shortage of conflict in this line. But if you're looking for something a bit extraordinary, there's a little task my family has been putting off, explained Loki. Out with it already, said Anahid, interrupting Loki. There is a little hole filled with strange artifacts taken from my home, and we will retrieve those items and bury them in addition to the mining vein they found, said Loki. Anahid was silent for a moment, and eventually sighing, she said, Let us make post haste. And Loki started running a bit, and then he felt as the rest of his body turned into a mist through the powers of Anahid. And Loki had never been pure water, and he felt it was an interesting sensation. And the wind felt like hundreds of silky feathers, and instead of heading for their new hold, Loki started playing around with his new powers. And while he tried to decipher just how much range he had with Hanahid, and the water elemental studied her new companion, and through their bond, she had a keen sense of Loki's physicality, and there was a degree of amorphousness about him, and at times she felt like he was two different beings, with the second entity being Loki's long black hair, and spiritually speaking, there was but one stubborn soul. And Hanahid noticed that his flavor of soul was akin to the ones that produce revenants, and as soon as their heads touched the ground, the revenants were up and about, being a pain to their family members, and the only magic that she sensed was limited to Loki's hair. And it was a strange place for a magic to reside, but she figured that Loki came from a strange place indeed, since she had found him literally buried on the ground.
Wait, is Loki an Umbra witch?
I don't know, seems like it.
Okay.
Well, now that he finally acquired magic, but it only localized on the hair.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay.
Loki by now had changed back to normal, and the first thing he did was try to see how much water he could generate. Water summoning, as it was called, was necessary in circumstances where a natural source of water was nowhere to be found, and water magic always needed its element in nature to do much of anything. And coming near the river, Loki focused on summoning the water to his hand, and indeed a handful disappeared and appeared in the palm of his hand. And he closed his eyes to attempt it once again with the help of another fellow, and he had to even fly towards the ocean, and once Loki had the beach within his sight, he called for seawater, and seawater and freshwater produce two different types of water spells. And he then tried to change its temperature and its shape, and Hanahid observed this with mild amusement. And Loki suddenly had a great control for a non-magical fellow. And to answer the thought in the back of her mind, Loki said, I am channeling the abilities of someone who actually knows how to work with water magic. I could just guide you as well along if you so desire, said Hanahid. You may be a water elemental, but most beings do not know everything about their own selves, said Loki, and a little calibration before heading into battle doesn't hurt. Fine, suit yourself, said Hanahid flatly. And once Loki was done experimenting, she said, You know, I can summon the water found within other living creatures. Is that so? Said Loki, understanding the implications. So, I take the blood out of people.
Blood bending?
Wow. Hey, other creatures are 90% water, so just get the water out of, if you get the water out of a creature, what do you do to them? Yeah. Think about it. Loki made a mental note of this fact, and turning into an aqueous dragon, he started flying in earnest to his destination. And during their flight, Didymus asked Loki, why did it take you so long to make a contract with a demon or whatever if you wanted magic? You can't just walk up to a fellow and say, give me all of your powers. You have to offer in return something that you are willing to part with, said Loki. What a Scrooge, said Didymus more to himself. Loki stoically ignored Didymus, and meanwhile he was musing herself about her new traveling companion, and the fact that he seemed to talk to himself did not seem too promising to her. And after flying for quite a bit, Loki arrived to the reclusive mining town of Silvernight. Silvernight had been a thorn on Loki's and his siblings' side since their arrival, and they did not know at the time, but for more than 5 decades the city had been stealing from their family. And suspicion started to arise when he heard of his little brother Ahi's klepto problems, and he always traditionally took items that belonged to familiar grounds without asking. However, he never went as blatantly as stealing from other folks, let alone who were too weak to fight for him for it, and at least this was what Loki chose to believe. Regardless, during his wedding, while looking through his dragon hoard, Loki recognized one of his mother's sacred brushes. And despite not being able to use magic, his mother always had a knack for collecting magical artifacts, and how that item and that other had been nagging the back of Loki's head for quite some time, and it was only now that he was finally able to put two and two together. And based on a previous observation, the brush originated from Silvernight, and Silvernight was unimpressive, uneventful mining town, and a couple of miles south of the road leading out to the plateau. And a relatively new town, it had been founded after silver had been discovered, and it had been mined dry in less than 3 years, and in spite of this, the miners still continued to work there. The ownership of the mines passed by many hands, and as of now they were being operated by one of the senior members of the merchant guild known as the Earl of Rosie. And about 70, Rosie was a mixed breed, as the locals would call him, and his mother was half elf and half human, while his father was part nymph, part dwarf, and despite being a mixed breed, he had the appearance of being very much human. Though at the time Rosie wondered how long he would last, and carried by his fears and concern about his own mortality, Rosie always embarked in many foolish ventures in his search for immortality. And now he was the owner of Silver Knight, and the first stop Loki made before entering the town was at the crossroad. And he wasn't surprised to see Karina waiting for him, and she waved at him to call his attention. And when he was near enough, Karina said, "I just got one of your train of thoughts, and yes, this man does seem awfully suspicious to me. Well, mining is not the sort of thing that raises a lot of red flags, though we should have a mental note to monitor all excavations in the future," said Loki. "It isn't my prerogative, and I suggest we pass it on to management," suggested Karina. "I already did, and they cannot spare anyone for the moment," said Dylan. "You can spare 100 people to follow my brother around, but you can't spare 5 just to keep track of mining operations," asked Loki. Dylan gave Loki a quaint smile, shrugging his shoulder, and eventually he said, "I think she God is creating a team to handle this problem. It shouldn't take long for things to return to normal. Well, as long as somebody's taking care of it. Still, for now we should plug this mine and see what sort of out-of-place objects slip into the continent," said Loki. "All right then," said Karina, nodding with approval. "Time, bro?"
12 minutes.
After pondering a bit, Loki decided that the quickest way was to storm the place and light some water monster to scare the ants out of the locals. And he fell upon the flames like a flood, half drowned in the guards. And just before he made his demand, Karina appeared in the middle of the town, and using one of her wind demons, she created a strong gale which swept Loki out of town and out of sight. And in the eyes of the people, Karina had saved the day. And somewhat deflated, Loki re-entered the town in the form of a little shepherd boy with a single llama for a companion. The llama being Didem, who found the entire situation quite amusing. And Karina was brought before the Earl of Rosie, and he lived in a manor near the silver smithies. And his men were hard at work weighing and measuring the worth of items that they had recently excavated. And the others were innocent but silver, and the merchants were weighing pots and plates and plant samples, and regardless of the miners brought, they were always paid with 2 gold coins for each of them, and the 2 coins were a local currency which could be exchanged for supplies in the market. And as of today, the town of Silverna had reverted to barter economy, and the newly acquired stock was given a wider range when trading with outsiders. And within Rose's manor there was even more activity, and changing form again, Loki mimicked the clothing of one of the foreign merchants, and then he regrouped with Karina, who was being presented to Rosie. And he heard Rosie say, "There was a commotion in the southern gates." "Aye, sir," said one of the knights. "This here wind dispatched the water demon that attacked us. At other times I would be likely to believe that you had summoned the beast for attention, as so many of your kind often do, but alas, it does seem plausible," said Rosie, sighing. "Pray do tell, what seems to be the problem?" asked Karina. "For the last month or so, a disaster has befallen the miners, and at first it seemed like freak accidents, the usual kind one finds in their trade. However, when the mutilated bodies started turning up, I feel that there's some maliciousness at play, and now the soldiers are telling me that the water monster has torn the gates open," explained Rosie. One of the knights, noticing Loki, asked, "Who are you?" "A curiouser, in search of curiosity. Pay me no mind," said Loki. "I remember every new face that enters this town, and you did not pass through our gates," whispered the same knight, pulling Loki to the side. Again Loki said in a commanding tone, "Pay me no mind." "Carry on," said the knight, leaving Loki be. "Take me into the mine," said Karina, "and I will investigate the source of the problem. For a fee, of course." "Ah, yes, go on," said Rosie, and he added, pointing to the nearest knight, "You there, take the wish." "Karina," said Karina. "Ah, yes, well, the pleasure. Take her to the mines then," said Rosie. Karina did a small courtesy, and then she started walking ahead, with the knight and Loki following behind. And the knight commented to Karina, "You certainly know your way around Silver Knight, madam. I came here many years ago. Back then, it was a true silver mine." "Not well, whatever this is," said Karina, gesturing towards the merchant. The knight sighed, and then he said, "It is how it is, and normally when the mine dries out, the town gets abandoned, and it isn't normal for a town such as this to persist when there is no silver to harvest, and I feel we broke the natural rule, and those are being punished for it." "It isn't your fault," said Karina sternly. Then I noticed, and Loki said, "Oh, the curiouser, why don't you go bother someone else? The mines are dangerous, and I will not guarantee your safety, and I cannot even guarantee my own." Karina and Loki followed the knight through town, and most of the concert was made around or into the walls of the mountain, and the mouth of the mine was found in the far western portion of the town. And the houses there were more like shacks, and there were the dwellings of miners whose living conditions were akin or maybe worse than slaves. And this was a common sight since only the owner of the mine typically benefited from the operation. And then I walked a little way to the mines, always turning towards the right, and eventually stone and the dirt walls acquired a smoother feel to it. And then when it's a natural cave system formed by ancient lava tubes, and in a certain section there were 2 meter large gypsum and selenite crystals. And one of those crystals had fallen and broken one of the cave walls, and on top of the crystal pillar there was a makeshift wooden stair with rails for railing. And at the end of the path, the broken wall led to a completely different sort of location. And once inside the place, there was that familiar pressure in the back of the head. And Karina and Loki already knew what they were. And the broken wall led to a similar place to the curiosity room, and there were stands, cabinets filled with items, and the walls and the roof were aligned with books. And at the end of the room was a person preserved in a clear blue glass container the shape of a glass dome. And written at the foot of the jar was the same phrase repeated in many languages, most of them unintelligible. And after circling the jar a bit, Loki eventually found a warning in human language. In classic Latin it read, "Alice lecit tiri non licet." And Karina read those words aloud, and she said to the knight, "It basically means, some may do it, you cannot." Time, bro?
7 minutes.
The pickleman had that phrase written on him. Some may do it, you cannot. Karina found meditating on the matter, and Loki then made his way towards the walls, feeling them with the tips of his finger. Eventually he noticed that the walls did not have any doors or windows, and combined with the warning on the jar and the amount of junk surrounding the fellow, Loki concluded, "I think you guys were great robbing the dead guy." "You think so too? I told Rosie, but he wouldn't listen," said the knight, folding his arms. "All of these items are probably cursed. Grave robbing is fine, as long as you allow enough time for the soul to give up its attachment to his worldly possession. Once it's gone for good, then you can take as much as you like," said Karina. "Lovely," said the knight, rolling his eyes. The knight did not enter the room, rather he lingered on the bridge, and should anything occur, he planned on being the first person to escape. And Karina asked, "Why do you say you saw the body?" "I saw nothing, rather the miners brought it in out of the cave, claiming that they had been attacked by something," explained the knight. "How interesting," said Loki. He then asked the knight, "How long ago did the fellow get killed?" "About 6 days ago," said the knight. "Ah," said Loki sadly, and he then placed his hands beneath his ear to summon Anahid. And the elemental had been hearing the entire conversation, and through his power she summoned whatever blood was not found inside living tissue. And much to her surprise, the entire walls lost plenty of the coloration, and the seemingly bleached black walls apparently had a beautiful flowery paintings and other swirling nature decoration. And the knight, taking more of a step back, he asked, you were the water demon." "Yes, and now I'm helping you track down your murderers or whatever. And I did not have a travel permit, and this seemed like the easiest, fastest way to town," explained Loki. "You could have just knocked or jumped over the gate, anything but damage our fortifications," protested the knight. "None of that matters, and the fellow in the yard was not the one responsible for the killings, and this blood found on the wall is ancient. And the one from your fellow apparently originated deeper within the cave, and you might want to check it out," said Loki, somewhat disappointed. Time, bro?
5 minutes, 40 seconds.
"A pretty dear, Loki," said Karina, patting Loki's back. "And I was hoping for an epic confrontation of sorts, but instead it turned out to be a run-of-the-mill murder investigation," said Loki sadly. "I am sorry that our mundane problems trouble your soul, you lazy demon," said the knight coldly. Loki was at a loss, and together with his sister they examined all of the items in the storeroom, and aside from the fellow in the yard, everything else seemed mundane enough to let it slide. And Loki scratched the walls, opening a small hole, and Anahid traveled a couple of ways within the walls and found nothing but dirt. And the strange familiar heaviness in the back of the head was still there, and yet there was nothing for miles on end, as far as Anahid was concerned. And in the end, Loki said, "Either empty this room as far as possible, or take everything back and put the wall back up. And there's a strange nauseous gas that could be toxic after long exposure, and this is not the sort of place one should ever linger. And we can always hide in your hands should the eventualities occur," said the knight unconcerned. Karina narrowed her eyes, and her shadow extended, taking the form of a frightful demon, and it crept behind the knight, and she was about to bite his head off when she saw Loki shaking his head sadly. And sighing, Karina said, "I suppose there are some things that cannot be helped, and let us continue our cave exploration." "I don't think there's anything else besides this place," said the knight, "and we should still look just to be safe," insisted Karina. And the three moved past the cave, and they continued down the winding path, and eventually they reached a natural portion of the cave. And then I was forced to remove his armor to squeeze through the final portion of the cave, and it was there where they found the signs of the recent mining activities, and the walls were pitch black due to the presence of the galena, a natural source of silver, and the ground was composed of alluvial sediments. And once Loki saw the dirt, he said, "Well, now you know what all the fuss was about. The miners discovered a new vein, and one of them black that got killed. Mission complete. Let's go." So like the murder was just like the miners murdering one of their guys that broke our pact of secrecy. Because they found silver, but they didn't want to tell their miner owner about it. But then one of them hinted it, so then he just got murdered. Nothing supernatural, just murder. Regular murder. People killing people. Karina followed along and Loki behind, and the knight too started to walk, but he bumped into a rock. And the night curse echoed through the cave, and he picked up a sword and he threw it. And it was then when he saw a clear, misshapen octahedron, and realizing what it was, he made a mental note to return later. And he placed the stone that he had found within his coin purse before departing. And Loki and Karina were not in a mood to linger in Silverland, and they had already had the location of the storehouse he relocated. And to Karina's concern, she started buying all of the items that had already been sold and that could be considered dangerous. And 2 days before the departure, Disdain brought Loki some disturbing news. All of the miners of Silverland had been executed, as well as whatever family member was living with them in their shacks. And the knight had apparently bought the mine from Rosie as well as the manor. And Rosie was not the sort of fellow to linger whenever he had met failure, and with his departure, the knight ordered his men to kill all the workers and ransom the horse in search of the diamonds that they were sneaking. And I want to let things go. Loki pondered on the easiest way to punish the murderous knight and his fellow companions. And a day passed, and Loki felt like was trapped for time, and in the end he decided to just take the easy route. And he went to a bar and he pretended to get drunk, and then he started babbling about the newly discovered diamond mine in Silverland. It was a long shot, but Loki planted the seeds of greed, and hopefully one of the fellows would be mindful enough to go raiding the place, like Loki hoped. And since he had a couple of hours to kill, Loki made a quick visit to Ingrid's castle. And when he came to see her, she was combing her black hair while facing the waterfall. And not turning around, she said, "You just come and go as you please, don't you, Loki?" "How do you know it was me?" asked Loki. "It is your hair. You wore the pesky flower for so long that now your hair smells of gardenia," said Ingrid. "So it was seen," said Loki. "Time?"
1 minute 30 seconds. Also, if you don't know who he is, you gotta read Saturnastra. It's like a completely different book.
"And in the sand, the flower of the king of Gardenia symbolizes secret desire," explained Ingrid. "I know what the flower means and what Alida meant when she gave it to me. And here you are moments before the father bothering me, when you should be pasturing her," said Ingrid. "It was easier by then, but now a type of pollution has tainted my soul, and I feel like I don't recognize myself when I look in the mirror," explained Loki. Ingrid turned around to look at Loki, and raising an eyebrow, she said, "Well, I don't blame you. You keep changing form so much, you are bound to lose track of who you truly are. Maybe you should give transformations a rest a little. Yeah, maybe I'm overthinking things." Time?
That's in a minute.
Alright, so this is a good place. Alright, so that's the ending of Loki. He just decided to give a rest to his transformation, but then he started missing his old friends before going home. Bye bye and God bless.
So that was the end of the book?
Yeah, that's the end of the book. Bye bye.